Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday morning D&D show. My name is Jordan, with a silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. And it's pretty quiet. I don't think we have anything really to talk about. It's kind of interesting. I do want to say thank you,
Jordan.
Moa
There's
Peach,
a dumpster fire.
Yeah, there's a dumpster fire outside. I do want to say thank you, Moa Peach, for being a member for 10 months. That's really awesome of you. I am tired and achy as I got a COVID booster yesterday, and these things kick my butt every time I've gotten one. I do not feel good for like 3 days afterwards. So if I'm a little out of it, that is why. But yeah, we're gonna dive in and talk about some controversy, which I am deeming the O.G.Hell. I'm surprised nobody else has done this. And yeah, so we'll elephant in the room. We'll talk about Wizards of the Coast has not said or released anything, but a leak of the O.G.Hell, supposedly 1.1, came out, and it has specific wording in it that invalidates the previous O.G.Hell, and that is what our community is upset about, because that would mean that Pathfinder and Dungeon Crawl Classics and all of these retro clones have to, if they want to keep selling their product, would have to sign the 1.1 because they can't publish under the original O.G.Hell. And MCDM, a lot of those people too. So not a lot of companies have made statements, but a lot of people have made statements. And somebody in our chat who was just saying that I'm surprised Jordan didn't make a video. Yesterday I was talking that I'm like, if I hear a YouTuber say one more time, I didn't want to make this video, but I'm going to because I'm going to cash in on this. I was like, I'm going to pull my hair out. So I do want to make a video on the open game license because I have thoughts and opinions on it, but I don't want to jump on this bandwagon, I guess. That's kind of my thoughts.
Jordan, I like and love you even more when you said that, because that was the one thing that stood out to me is the avalanche of the bandwagon jumpers of, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is doing bad. Let me jump out on Twitter and say, hey, here's how you can play Paizo's games, or here's how you can do that. You know, they were the same ones that have been doing it all along. Like this idea of there's just this group of haters out there for Dungeons and Dragons that love when Wizards of the Coast stumbles or something happens, they just jump right on it. Like, yeah, we should leave this evil company and never play their game again. We should play DCC. You know, there's that kind of group.
Well, and I'm all for playing other games. And it's interesting, the backlash on this, because I had somebody just contact me on Instagram and was like, hey, I love your podcast. What non-D&D games do you recommend? Because I want to like switch over. So this has been real bad for Wizards of the Coast. And I was like, subscribe to the J3 channel because that's the one that I do a lot of other stuff. Cause I do love a lot of different role-playing games. And I
disagree.
Think you
should embrace.
I disagree with Hasbro a lot and the mentality, and that's fine too. But I guess I'm saving, I want to talk about it when we know stuff. And I even saw somebody say, you know, all of this like tearing apart the legal mumbo jumbo of a contract we don't have is not good for like the community, but it's also not good going forward, because then lawyers are going to be like, I don't know, like, I don't know exactly why I should say, but like we're over analyzing certain things when we are not qualified to in a legal sense. It was weird. Go ahead.
It's the argument of, if you believe that this is tearing the community apart and you're jumping on something you don't even know yet, you haven't actually seen it, it's only really rumored, and you're kind of ginning up all of this controversy, you are also part of the group that is tearing this apart. If you want to put Hasbro in that same boat, I think you're in that same boat. You are, and you're doing it because you're getting YouTube views, and you're doing it because you're getting Twitter likes. Not, you know, if you're passionate about it or you're a creator and you're speaking your mind because you've created something, that's completely valid to me. If you're everybody else that's just jumping on and saying, hey, this is going to get views for my YouTube channel, or this is going to, you know, get more people to say, yay, look at me, you know, you're fighting the man, you're just stirring up the controversy as much as you're complaining about the company that you say is destroying the community. So to me, you're the same.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I just don't like jumping on bandwagons like that, but
Yeah, especially when we don't even see it yet. Let it come out.
And that's the thing is like, I've seen the same snippets that everybody else has that were screenshotted on the Gizmodo article. But you're right. I haven't read the whole thing. Not a lot of people have.
And
it was supposed to come out last week, but I think the backlash of this, Wizards was like, we're just going to let the fire die down and then we'll make a statement or reevaluate what we're going to do.
Sure.
I just want to point out some not weird, but interesting things. Critical Role hasn't made a statement, and on their Reddit and their Twitch, they have forbidden, you can get banned for trying to bring up a conversation about the O.G.Hell. So they're just like, we don't want to talk about it until we know more things. I would argue that they probably know a lot more, but it's not public information yet because they have worked with Wizards a lot. The official Wizards of the Coast Discord is, or the D&D Discord, which merged with D&D Beyond. I didn't realize this until recently, but the two of them merged into one Discord.
Makes sense.
They're also banning people from talking about the O.G.Hell. And there was another place that it was just like, can we not talk about it? But in their defense, it's all rumors at this point. And the fact that these are coming out, I think people will come back. I think Wizards will have to come back and say, this is what's true, this is what's not true. And then we can have a discussion moving forward. So, unfortunately, yes, it is, Moa, it is a wait and see kind of a thing. And I had a lot of people say like, oh, is your YouTube channel in danger? Are you this? I was like, I've never used the O.G.Hell for any of my YouTube stuff. For me, it's always been like for publishing, and I've never even used it for publishing. But
it's not in danger from the O.G.Hell, but it could be in danger of everybody deciding Dungeons and Dragons is evil and nobody should be doing it, and then that's it. That's the last.
I don't think it's evil, but like
Dungeons and Dragons stuff. But I'm just
Dungeons and Dragons, it'll never go away.
Yeah.
The fact that it survived 4th edition, it'll never go away. Because it's awesome. Like, it's Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, it barely survived 4th edition. Pathfinder had a chance to take it.
Well,
right at that point.
Pathfinder, they did sell more during 4th edition than 4th edition. But I think the name Dungeons and Dragons is pretty strong. And unfortunately, I think that's what Wizards / Hasbro was betting on, is that people are diehard D&D fans and not necessarily role-playing fans. But it's kind of the idea, Ben Milton put it really well in I think he said this a while ago, before this even happened, that the O.G.Hell was basically like, here's the source code for RPGs, for like fantasy RPGs. And using that source code, we have been able to elaborate and make a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's kind of like Linux as an operating system. Linux is free, but I can also take it and build it and make it my own. And then I can sell that as a product and things like that. And it's, when you think about it like that, it's like, okay. But yeah, I think they're not viewing it like that. They're viewing at, we're creating competition, and so they want to kind of like stop it and stuff. But I think the existence of the O.G.Hell, and this is my hot take, and it's not really a hot take, is that 5e is so popular because of that. Because of the Matt Colvilles who could have $1 million Kickstarters that were in the news, because of Critical Role and Tal'Dorei and all this other stuff, like those became, although small financially compared to the 900 and some $1 million that Wizards makes off of D&D, it blows up the brand really big, you know, like $1 million Kickstarters get in the news. And it's like, oh, what's this? Oh, I better check out this D&D thing. And so I think the existence of it has helped 5th edition immensely. And for new management to come in and kind of say, oh, no, we don't want you to do that anymore. It's like, well, we helped build your castle. You can't just like kick us out now. But yeah. Anyway,
I think it's interesting, really. I think that there's so many ways to look at it and so many different views. And I think of it like you just said, like when you think of it as an OpenGL as the name, which implies more of like open source software or open source things that me and you have been a part of some of that stuff, just even in the work we've done. So it's very common for us. And I know you like Linux and those kinds of things, but Disney doesn't look at their product as being open Disney, right? You don't just get to do Disney stuff and make money off it because you're like, hey, Mickey Mouse is awesome, and I'm going to throw that on my thing and make a lot of money. Disney's going to come down on you like, you know, a ton of bricks. And I think that's what Hasbro looks at it as a brand. They don't look at it as we're the builders of, you know, the first internet protocol out there. We're the, you know, we're giving you a way to run Windows that's not Microsoft in some way. You know, it's a free open sourced Windows variant or whatever.
So I don't like
that's
the
a very
idea.
Different view.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of necessarily playing devil's advocate, but I wanted to put it into perspective with something that I understand a little bit better, rather than like the diversification of role-playing games. And so in a video that I have not recorded or released, but I have written and rewritten several times. And if you are subscribed to my Patreon, I actually put the whole text up there just because I was like, this is kind of my thoughts. But I equated it to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. And I don't know if I told you this or somebody else, or maybe I talked about it last week. Okay, yeah. Because like, if you just said, I want to make Harry Potter, like, or the wizarding world, I should say, very, very popular.
There you go.
You know, and it's like, I'm going to say anybody can make a wizarding world movie. Non-canonical things, but here's like a list of Latin spells that you can use. So we're all kind of playing with the same tools. And the idea is that if all these people can make these little videos or little movies or little TV shows, that, you know, my Wizarding World brand is going to go up and up and up and up. But the problem is when the Wizarding World brand owners will say, like, WB, Warner Brothers, they look out and they're just like, wow, this guy's actually making better products than I. Like, I don't know if I like that. And like, they're making a lot of money over the tools we gave them. So I think that's how Hasbro's looking at it. And Hasbro is very money centric. They have shareholders. They have things like that. I also don't like corporations. So I completely sympathize with the small guy. Like, I think that the small person should be able to do his $100,000 to $200,000 Kickstarter a year to support his small business. And not have to funnel a whole bunch of money to Wizards or ask for permission or things like that. But it's all control. And I'm sure they were looking at it and they're like, well, we can increase profits like this, because that's all major public corporations look at. How do I shrink costs and get profits higher? And that's the money world that they look at. And I disagree with a lot of that, because I think you should say, not how I shrink profits, but how do I make a better product to then sell more of that product? Because there's a point where quality is important, I think. And I don't necessarily feel that Dungeons and Dragons is like lacking quality, or that one D&D will lack quality, but I think the higher ups are always like, how do we maximize profits? And one of those ways is to stomp competition. And the other way is to license out stuff. So the idea that if you want to make stuff for D&D, then we want a cut of your money. So
I think another good analogy is the Unreal Engine. Like, you can download the Unreal Engine right now. You can build a game on it. You can publish that game.
Yeah.
The minute it makes a certain monetary threshold, you do have to start paying them.
Yeah.
You have to purchase the license for the engine that you built your game on. So there is this,
but you can build
you can
it for
creative,
free, basically.
You can build your passion project if you want, but if you make $1 million, now we have to talk about you made $1 million. That's what it seems like to me too. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just this idea of that's what these corporations do. And there's people that their job is to make sure they're maximizing the money for their shareholders, right? And if you're a shareholder, that's what you've hired them to do, and that's what you purchase, you tell them to do. And that doesn't necessarily align. I always think it's not mutually exclusive though too, because I think you have those people that are creative and you're saying, hey, make a better product, and you have that group you've hired to do that. You just also happen to have this group that says maximize product. You also have this group that's your lawyers for when people come to sue you. And then you have this group that's like, your advertisers that want to make your product seem better than everybody else's. And then how, and maybe even denigrate other people's products if that's the way you're going to go. Like you said, monopolize the space that you're in and try to push out the competition type thing. They hire people to do that. So corporations have like just this it's like it's a Hydra head, right? It's good and bad and all mixed together. And it's when they try to run for profit, it sucks because nobody builds the company just say, well, let's just build the community. It's not nonprofit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Wizards of the Coast is nonprofit. It says we're going to make role-playing games great on the table, and we're going to do it through this nonprofit corporation. But maybe if they did, maybe if there was something out there like that, or if a nonprofit corporation had the biggest selling tabletop game out there, I wonder what that would look like, what that fantasy world would be like, because that would be one in which people could just create stuff and there would be open rule sets and you could do your Kickstarters and your build your books and whatever it might be. I saw Matt Colville did say something. He said, we talked to our lawyers. They believe it doesn't affect any of the books that we've already produced. So we're just moving along and we're just going to keep creating cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
they believe it doesn't affect flea
mortals.
So that's what I read. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I thought he said his previous books too. Like they're not going to have to go back and.
It might have. It was an MCDM post, not necessarily Matt Colville.
Yeah.
It was like from whatever, but yeah. So I don't know, but I guess we're going to find out. We're going to see if you can copyright, trademark game mechanics, which traditionally you shouldn't be able to, as in past law. Like, yes, your Drits and your Elminsters and your Forgotten Realms, that's all trademarked and that's your intellectual property and stuff. But the O.G.Hell never utilized all of that. So it's just, I don't know, it's back and forth. So, because I think if you can create under the old license, this will be fine and we'll weather ourselves out and there will be D&D content and there will be non-D&D content. But it's the idea that they want to squash the O.G.Hell or change it going forward. But we'll see. Because I'm under the opinion that when you give away something for free like that, it's going to be real hard for you to take it back and say, now you have to pay for it. And they're like, but it was free for 23 years. I don't know about that. So
yeah, that's always a tough sell.
I mean, it's just, that's hard for people.
And even from last week, one last thing I'll say is that I still think people should have moved off this long ago. People should have been creating their own stuff. People should have been exploring their own game systems and not relying on the D&D brand, not hitching their horse to it. As I think even Ben has mentioned that quite often too, when he talked about stuff, just be creative and there's all kinds of game systems out there. There's all kinds of D6 systems, D20 systems, create a D percentage system, create a stat plus something system. There's so many things out there you can be doing and expanding the community that way and expanding the hobby in those directions instead of putting all this energy into also just keep creating D&D stuff. I think we should have more and more stuff that's non-D&D and D&D can do its thing. Wizards of the Coast and a few of the people that want to, stick with that can do that. And we all are happier.
Yeah. And like I said, I had people reach out and they're just like, are there any like third-party games that you recommend? And I'm like, so many. Like Forbidden Lands is a game that I love that's fantasy based. So it's not, it has that D&D feel. You can be a druid or a fighter or things like that. And it's super fun and it's like a D6 system with other dice kind of included to augment your rolls.
Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Warhammer,
fantastic.
And it was funny because on the message I got, they were like, well, Kids on Bikes. I was like, well, that's a fun game, but not necessarily the fantasy replacement you're looking for. But I was like, 13th Age is really good. DCC, a lot of these others, it's funny how, Cypher. I do understand, Cypher system. But yeah, the way you were saying, like, there was a big push in the Pathfinder world. And I think they're scared, the fans are scared that Wizards could pull Pathfinder technically away from them because Paizo operates under the O.G.Hell. But there was a lot of just play Pathfinder. And I saw so many people that were like, I don't want to play that. And I made the argument in a Discord that I was talking to people. I'm like, if rules and mechanics and the way things are written don't matter, we would all play Fate, but nobody plays Fate. I want to point that out. Because mechanically, it's an amazing game kind of a thing. But every time I've played Fate, I've always been like, well, that was kind of boring. I don't know. And so there's something to be said about a system. It's not just it's kind of the same way of oh, you like movies? Watch any other movie. It's like, well, but I like this movie. I don't know. But we can move on.
Like
There's actually some other interesting news that are happening with Hasbro right now. A journalist submitted an article today on Bloomberg, and I think I put the link in the description, but on my phone I can read it, but on a web browser it comes up with a paywall that wants me to like register. But this reporter said that he heard from a Wizards of the Coast rep, like an official statement-ish, official in the sense that it's not public, but it was from this guy, that they are canceling a D&D game, video game, that they're making with Hidden Path Entertainment. But Hidden Path Entertainment tweeted that they're like, we are still making this game with Hasbro, and in fact, we're hiring, everything's good to go. And then the guy retweeted and was just like, no, it's not. That's really weird. I would like to get an official statement. So it's kind of this back and forth. But the end of his article said something like that they're canceling two pre-production games and then another existing game that they've been working on for a while to cut costs and make profits look better. I'm not really sure. Apparently their Hasbro stock has not been doing very well, despite Dungeons and Dragons. Toy sales are down for some reason, and the supply chain was causing that. So I don't know. I didn't know about this game. I didn't know Hidden Path was working on it. Nobody really knows what it is, but
yeah, they've had projects that were barely announced or not really much info on that we knew were out there, but we didn't really know what was going on. So to me, those are the type of things that, I don't know. I don't even know the name of it, what it would have been or what we might have gotten or what we didn't get or what we are still getting. Some of those we don't even know which ones are still coming out. Baldur's Gate is probably about the only one that we know is still moving full steam ahead that I know of game-wise. I feel like I thought there was another company that
well, they bought a company.
It's all like vague.
Yeah, they bought a company to like make stuff, but nobody knew if it was for Magic the Gathering or D&D. Baldur's Gate 3 is the big one that's coming out. And then I'm trying to think of the melee fighter that you could be Dritz and Catabri. What was that game called?
That game. I was just trying to think of that same thing.
It's super underperformed. They were expecting that to be like a blockbuster big hit, and it was just like not fun and not super well received. So I was
thinking there was that company that made it was making another game. That's what I thought.
Oh, they might be. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Crazy.
Anyway,
I did see something that was pretty funny, D&D related on Twitter that I thought was cool. There's a stand-up display somewhere. I don't know if it'll be at movie theaters when you go to see the movie or not, but it has the characters. Dark Alliance has the characters of the movie standing in full size with a gelatinous cube in the center, and then you can go behind the display and get inside the gelatinous cube and have your picture taken. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah,
I think if I go to the movies and they have one of those, that's something I want to get.
No,
gelatinous cube would be awesome.
I saw that and I thought it was hilarious, and obviously that's really fun, but I was like, what I want to do is cross all of the fandoms. I was like, you should show up in a Spider-Man costume and be in front of the Dungeons and Dragons and be like, how did I get here? Or like you should be like in your Frodo outfit and standing there like, what's happening? I thought that's where my brain goes, and I was like, that's really funny. But obviously that'll be a lot of fun because you can take your picture next to Chris Pine and you'll be good to go. And that movie comes out March, April, so that's coming out pretty soon. We're in the 2023s, so that's crazy.
I'm getting excited.
Dungeon 23. Are you still working on it? How are you doing a week later?
Jordan, let me tell you about a tower.
Okay.
That appeared one day. Nobody knew why. And people went in it. And they came out with cool, powerful items. And then more people went in it because they saw those people had cool, powerful items. And then a whole town built up around this tower. And it goes up into the sky, probably somewhere around 12 levels or more. And level one. Yeah. So what I did with mine is I started with the room number 1, January 1. It's funny to me as I go through this. I'm curious to see how your process was. I felt like day 1, I almost had to have my whole concept in my mind and how I'm going to do 12 levels because I didn't just want it to be randomness, right? Just it had to have a theme and all this other stuff. So all of a sudden, day one, it was like a heavy lift of creativity. So I started, instead of starting on the entrances to my level 1, I started at the central staircase that you get to this room. It's round, has a staircase in the center, and it goes up to level 2. And that is room number 1. And there's 4 archways that come into this room. From those 4 archways are the other 4 rooms I've built so far, which are the mini boss rooms for each of the 4 areas.
Okay.
The first level is the level of elements, that each of the areas pied off into these different rooms and ways you can go through it. And you can pick when you come into the entrance of this tower that you want to go through either the fire area, the earth, the water, or the air area. And things are themed in that way until you get to the mini boss. And if you beat the mini boss, you get to the staircase that lets you go to the level 2.
Oh, okay.
What I also devised is that the tower is actually a conduit for magical energy. And the reason it exists is it's a challenge to get you to use your magic abilities. And then it siphons that power into the tower and uses it and sends it somewhere. No spoilers yet on who or what is using that power to do something. So they built this tower to encourage adventurers to come in. And what they wanted the adventurers to do is to throw as many spells as they could. So that the intent of the levels is to get you to use your fireball as many times as possible, because it's going to absorb that energy into the tower. It uses some of that energy to create the creatures you're fighting and to maintain the tower itself, and to create a few of the magic items that helps feed the greed monster of the adventurers that are coming. But then the second brilliant thing they did is when you defeat these creatures throughout this tower and you're moving through it, they also will drop, they've taken the magical energy and turned it into elemental energy. So if you're in the fire area and you beat something in the fire area that's general that, you can pick up some elements that you can then take back to the town, and the crafters there will buy that element and build magical items and armor and
that's
weapons,
like fire themed or something. Okay.
That has some type of fire theme or fire resistance or fire attack or fire based in some way. So you can trade those in and get stuff built for yourself. You can just trade it in and sell it so you have more money to buy other equipment you need, and you can go back into the tower. And
that's really cool.
In the center, when you beat the mini boss, one of the things you can buy to go into this tower is a medallion. And a medallion allows you... Oh, and here's the other thing. The doors open in the morning, and at midnight, everybody is teleported out of the tower. So you have
there's a time
day
limit
to get through the tower. But you can buy a medallion that if you beat a mini boss, you can skip the level and go to the next level with your medallion. So you can touch a thing and it goes, oh, now we're on level 2 if we want to. So you can farm a level if you want, or you can use your medallion after you beat the mini boss to go to a shortcut way.
Yeah. Straight to level 3 or something.
And higher into the tower. And it's all about forcing you or getting you to spend as much of your magical ability power as possible to siphon it from you.
It feels like an arcane Tomb of Horrors where the idea was like, let's kill a bunch of adventurers so that the phylactery of Acererak gets more souls. But this is like, just have them expend magic so that we can siphon it off. That's cool. Everyone in chat is like, people in chat are just like, that's A+, bud. That's awesome. So
nice.
They're like, that's really cool.
How is yours?
I like it. Mine's going well, but I agree with you. I think it was in December that I kind of was thinking about the overarching design and stuff. And I did want to have, 12 levels deep. But the idea is that after the 6th level, gravity's gonna flip, and then all of a sudden they're climbing up. Because cool. I want this to be a weird challenge kind of gate that leads you to another world. So it's not easy, but this is maybe how you get to Eberron. Like if I find this dungeon somewhere, I can crawl through it, and then I can get to a really interesting place. So, and that's kind of been the overall theme. And then I've been going through some prompts. So my prompt for week 1 was ancient, and I decided that it was going to be ancient dwarves that got corrupted by some kind of like frog demon.
Digging too deep.
And kind of a thing. And so there's lots of like frog themed things, that a lot of aquatic stuff. And then that's going to filter into week 2, which I forget the prompt, but I've been working on it a little bit here and there. So I was saying that I was watching Sly Flourish, and he's like, I'm doing this as well. He's like, but I'm giving myself permission to fail, and I'm giving myself permission to suck. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I'm going to give myself permission to fail and permission to suck. And so it's like, if you miss a day and you have to do like 3 rooms in a day or something, you didn't fail. Like, you're fine. Just the whole idea is just to be creative. And the fact that you're all excited about this tower and you're coming up with cool stuff is like, that's the reason to do this. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I kind of did the same thing to because when I say I've created this, what I have is a written visualization in words, but I haven't drawn anything out yet.
Right.
I think I want to eventually go back and do that. And I haven't necessarily built every stat block yet, but I do have my mini bosses. Let me give you one here.
Okay.
So the fire mini boss is a serpent that's probably, it's going to be the size of, a small bus or something. And it moves around, and in the area that you're fighting, as it moves, it leaves a trail of burning fire like Tron. So it's going to zoom across the room and try to fight, but it's going to leave behind this line, just like the old Snake game or the old Tron game, where if you get in it, so slowly your space to fight this thing gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're going to have to have strategies to deal with your losing ground, or what do we do when we have to jump across that fire, how much damage we're going to take, that kind of thing. And then the other thing it does is that the closer you get to it, if you hit it with a melee weapon, just like some of the creatures in Dungeons and Dragons, you take fire damage from the melee people. So this is not a great melee boss. So this is like the fire serpent, and it's going to drop really cool fire stuff. So then I did put a frog in mine too, just because you were mentioning frogs. My water world has a frog, and basically it's the water pistol, right? So it has, when you get into the room, it shrouds it in mist to lower visibility, but it still has a way to detect you through just the mist and the air itself, because it's created it. So it knows where things are in that mist. And then it shoots almost like a laser cutter of water pistol at people to try to hit them. So very solid, strong, single target damage, but it doesn't do AoE damage. So this is a boss that's all about single target. So your strategy has to come around, how are we going to deal with big, heavy damage to one target at a time, coming from an area we might not be able to see, and how are we going to deal with that? And it has little tunnels that can move underneath and swim and pop up into somewhere else, and then hit you from a pistol from another spot.
Nice.
And then the air is a hawk, kind of like a hawk for the air one, and there are pits all around the room, and it uses a wing attack to just push you off into pits. So it continues maneuvers and tries to push you into all these pits to take damage at all times while you're trying to fight this boss. And there'll be a few other things in there. And then the earth one is about the whole room you walk into, and it's all boulders that are house size, car size, bowling ball size, and they're just strewn all over. It's like this big boulder field, like you're on Mars or something or whatever.
Yeah.
And this big elemental like creature just comes up and decides its type of attack is by what boulder it picks up and throws at you. So the bowling ball size ones has, a certain stat line to it. And then the big ones have a big AoE stat line to it, or it might be a rolling one, or it might be a thrown one, or it might be one that shatters and then does a cone kind of thing when it shatters and does stuff. So that'll have like 3 or 4 different attacks based on it. You'll see the attack by what boulder it's picking up and it's about to throw. So your team can then kind of decide what's our strategy as we see it pick up the big boulder. We know what that one does. It's a roller, and it's going to roll it and crush everybody in a line. So everybody's spread out, or this one's a one that bursts and sprays into pebbles that just are sharp and does damage, but it's a cone. So if we know where the cone is, then we can try to maneuver around. So a little bit of game mechanics in it, a little bit of anime inspired, a little bit of old school, like you said, just the old temples and stuff, and then a Serac kind of fun in it. And I was just like, such a good idea. It was so fun to have their creativity to do that. But to go back to the original point, I couldn't do it all in just those days. It was
Correct.
like I was going to spend an hour, and I was 2 hours into one of the days. I'm like, okay, this wasn't going to be a project where I'm going to spend 5 hours until I'm done for this. I'm going to spend an hour or so a day building this thing. And if I have to come back and fill it out, give it a name, maybe draw the room out at some point, maybe finish out the stat, I'm going to do that. But each day I'm going to put the main concept of the room. And then what I did is I numbered them. So the center stairwell is room number 1, January 1, but it happens to be room 31 for the number of days. And then I went,
okay.
30, and I did 28, 29, it's like, so I'm sort of not even, what would it be called? It was, there's a term for it, like flow charting it versus not actually drawing it out, just so I have, because I was trying to think of how many rooms should be in one space and how many, so all of a sudden you have to think about that and what's the material and all this stuff. So there's a lot to it. So, but I'm enjoying it. I've been having fun.
That's really cool.
I've got to do today's, haven't done today's yet, but I've got a good plan for this level. And then each of my levels will be a theme of some sort. So this one was an elemental level. It'll have a name. And and then the next one will be something I might do, like light and dark and shadow and something else. And it'll be some other base thing. And people could, in my mind, in the legends of this world, they could maybe specialize in certain levels, and they make money off of, we're really good at this level, so we go in there and we farm that level, and that's how we make our money. And that's how these guilds, go.
We're the level 3 guild or something, or
and we're the shadow level guild, because all the people we hire to go in have this special ability that helps us in the shadow level, and we can come out with all this really cool stuff and sell it, and that's how we're making our money. Very kind of capitalistic in their ways. But then there's the other people that are like, who can go the highest, right? So then there's that group of people, and then there's whatever other adventures, and then there's just the normal adventures. We had nothing, and there's this chance if I go into this tower that I can come out. So the thing I haven't figured out yet, I was going to maybe talk, sometimes you need somebody to talk with, or even the community, is like, what about when players die, or how gamey do you make it? And I was thinking about even the resurrection part of it could be gamified, where you're people that somebody who's fallen, you can take their medallion, and if you go back to the start, you could touch the medallion on like a sarcophagus kind of thing, and then your person could come back. And I was thinking, why would they want to, why would you want to provide that? And I was thinking, but again, that's that magic energy, right? The resurrection spell has been cast, and what you want to happen in the tower is as many spells cast as possible. You don't want them to go back to town. If I'm the tower owner, and I'm trying to steal all this energy, I don't want them to go to town and then get rezzed at the cleric. I want them rezzed in my tower so I can siphon that energy. And then I started thinking, here's one more step. Tell me if you like this. What if they're also siphoning the divine power, and they're pulling power from the divinity? So it really wants to attract clerics and warlocks and all these people that have these, because it's siphoning energy from outside of our plane and taking it. And that's even better than just the ambient, stuff. And so I thought there's a cool possible storyline of the person who's built this tower and why they've done it, and the ways they're using this to get whatever they want, the energy that they're trying to get. So.
Yeah. No, I like the idea that if you die, maybe instead of getting teleported out at midnight, your body gets teleported to the base level. And then you could even say, like, there's a whole bunch of like clerics and stuff that'll come in and raise you for a price, because you need diamonds to do resurrection and stuff. But but then that energy is being capitalized. I also like the idea that maybe your magic dwindles as you go up. That could kind of interesting too. Like, it's like you can cast really powerful spells
before you cast it.
Well, yeah, like you can cast really powerful spells at the base level, but the higher you get up, the more it's like funneled up, or I don't know. But no, I think that's really fun. And it's funny because you were talking about it, and some people in chat were just like, well, what's the level of your thing, and stat blocks for monsters? I'm not even doing that. I'm literally, I guess I am being a little lazy, but I'll be like, oh, here's kind of a cool idea. And I'm like, we're going to have like 3 zombies in here. And I'm not statting anything. I'm just like, 3 zombies. There you go. I'll figure it out later. If I want to actually run this, then I'll use a system and I'll be like, oh, these are the type of zombies I want. I'm sure I'm going to have like mini bosses and stuff, and actually probably want to stat those out, like much like what you're doing. But all I could think of though is that your base floor was in harmony until the fire room attacked. And then that's when all of the The airbenders were lost. Anyway.
That's right. The Fire Nation. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think could be so many kind of like politics going on behind it, right? There could be the group who are trying to not let things happen or monopolize materials that are coming out of there. Or there could be a group, you could hire an adventuring group that could get you through the mini boss because you and your group can't beat it, but they can get you through it so you can get to the next level and you can do this other stuff. And to me, the main rooms would be like levels 1 to 3-ish, but the mini boss would be like a 5th level kind of, a CR5-ish kind of thing.
Right.
But then you go to the next level and then it would be, another range, another range, another range, definitely getting harder and harder as you go. The bosses are harder than the other things you meet in the area. So you can decide to only farm the creatures, or you can be a boss farmer. It really comes into, there's a lot of these Japanese animation kind of, where they're talking about playing MMORPGs, or they're in virtual MMORPGs, or they're somebody who's been thrown into this world, Isekai, I think is what the name of it is, where this kind of stuff happens. Like you have groups that form that are the farmers of low level stuff, but they can make money in it. There's the group who farm bosses because they want the materials that makes their guild better if they have those materials, better weapons and things. And then there's we have to be the number one. Who's the number one climber? And I also thought there could even be like a board on the outside who lists the name of the adventurer or adventuring party name that's gone the highest, right? So there's also another way to encourage those groups, because even in the Acererak thing, it was always about how do we encourage adventurers to come to our deadly tomb. So we have to put rumors out there about the cool weapons and magic items and things you can get out of it, because we want their greed to pull them in and not let them go. It's like a casino, right? It's like make them walk through the slot machines before they get to the right, the spot. We're going to siphon out every little penny we can of them. So I just thought there's all kinds of cool storylines there that you could introduce if you had something like this. And you could just run wild with in your world. You could put it in any of your worlds. You could probably put it in any system, really. I'm going to do it for 5e at this point, and just, because it's easy for me to build stat blocks and stuff for that. But it'd be easy to have this for a Numenera or a Cypher system version or a DCC version or, whatever.
I think the one thing I want you to do is that there hasn't been anybody reached the top yet, except for one mage. And it's like, did he eat? Because when he got to the top, he never came back down. So it's always like, is he a myth? Like, what's going on with this one mage? Like, that would be kind of cool.
Exactly. So. And then there's a conspiracy theory that he's the one that built it in the first place. Yeah. And that's how he got there. But the other group, no way. He's the one that's only one person has made it to the top. He didn't have a group. He didn't go with a big guild. No, he made it alone. That's exactly perfect.
That's cool. Yep. Well, I'm glad you're having fun with it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And in fact, I'm going to record a little follow-up week 2 video today and release that soon. Should be a lot of fun. Yeah. What's going on in the world of Paizo?
I saw they announced their Rage of Elements book, which is going to come out this summer, which is where you will get your kineticist class. So if anybody has been super excited for kineticists,
what is a kineticist?
So that is like their kind of like, I think it's like their airbender. You pick an element or you pick a couple elements and then you kind of go with them. So they said one of the things that I saw was one of the big changes in the player test version. You choose whether you have a single 1-element gate, a dual gate for 2 elements, or a universal gate for all elements. So when you're that's kind of like your subclasses of the kineticist. And that was similar to what they did. And one thing they talked about is like one of the other details. A lot of detail came in, like expanding the metal and wood elements that weren't in the play test and adding hybrid elements. Hybrid elements allowed the kineticist impulse to combine. For example, creating steam element if your gates were fire and water.
Right. That's kind of cool.
That 2 sentences made me want to play a kineticist. Like, I love the idea of you can use elementals
like fire and earth, like I'm a magma.
But you might be somebody who pulls something else in and you pull 2 things in and now you're this thing. So it's so airbender-like. It's so like Naruto, based, kind of like where they were bringing that kind of stuff in. But it's also like Magic the Gathering in some ways. Like, okay, I'm going to play a blue-black deck and that makes me this, or I'm going to play, So I just love the idea of a class that gives you that type of ability. I'm all in on something like that. If I get to play in a Pathfinder game at some point that I'm not running, I'm going to play a kineticist when they release this, because this just sounds super fun and cool.
Yeah,
So,
that is
Rage of
a
Elements
fun
is the name of the
idea.
book.
Kind of what I wanted the 4-element monk to be like in D&D, but
Yeah.
never. I played one for a little bit and it didn't feel how I wanted it to feel. But yeah. But I did like my flame sorcerer. I kind of did this by doing my flame sorcerer was a sorcerer that I just chose fire spells, and so I kind of did this inadvertently. But
I did the desert mage, and in my mind, it was all flame-based, heat-based stuff, and it was just this, this desert wizard, desert mage. I just thought it was, because when you theme your attacks that way, even if you were to go full ice or full fire, you have a lot of options in Dungeons and Dragons, where you don't have as many options when you want to start to combine those things, like you said. So if I want to do a steam, but the idea that you could do wood or metal is one of the gates, so you could have a metal-based element that you're doing stuff with. That just brings, that just screams to me, all the types of games that I want, that give you infinite combinations of things you can do just by picking and choosing. And that's why you're building modular D6, right? Modular D6 is all about picking and choosing pieces and putting together, and then they create something cool and new and different or themed, and that's what I liked about that class. So
no, and that's what I like too about
more of it.
Things like that, where infinite is a infinite combos. Obviously, I don't think could exist, but you're right. Like, now if I combine this and this, fire and water, and I make steam, but I also take this like path of like dueling fencer, maybe I have like a steam sword now that I've conjured, like that was the idea behind modular D6, is that I can pick these different modules, and when they're stuck together, they operate in a new way.
They
which I need to get back to that game
that somebody else could follow. Yeah.
But no, that's really cool. I like stuff like that too. And I always liked, it reminds me, I rewatched X-Men 2 last night, because I was like, X-Men 2 is so good, and I felt gross for my shot. So I'm like, I'm just going to watch this. But it got me thinking about when we were kids, we always talked about what X-Men power do you want? Like, what mutant power? And I always liked the powers that could do a whole bunch of different things. And like Magneto is a good example, where he could like fly, but he couldn't really fly, but he could fly if he wore metal. Or he could like manipulate people's iron in their blood for cool things, as opposed to Cyclops, who kind of was like, I just fire a beam out of my eye, or Wolverine, like, I heal. And you're like, okay, cool. But like, I like the idea of powers that it's like, oh, like Iceman was a great example, because he figured out how to do lots of really interesting, weird things with his power, not just freezing things, but like sliding and doing other cool stuff. So that's what I want in an RPG. I'll just say that. Dungeon Crawl Classics, Crypt of the Devil Lich is being shipped right now. I haven't received my copy, but I'm very excited for that. And I had a couple of people reach out and ask if I was going to run it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll run it publicly, because I've got so many games going right now. But it's like Tomb of Horrors turned up to 11 kind of a thing, and a pretty cool module. I bought it for 5e and for DCC. So I have side-by-side comparisons. And as somebody who wants to design a game, I'm really curious to open them side-by-side and kind of see, like, well, what's the difference? Like, are these fundamentally the same game, or will I have a very different experience running this for 5e than for DCC? And then they showed off some preview images, if you check my Twitter, of the Dying Earth box set, which is going to be 2 box sets. And they have them in this like really cool just cardboard box that is being sent to people. But the cardboard box itself, like the shipping box, has like all this cool Dying Earth art on it and things like that. And I was like, oh man, I'm so excited for that. So that is, I think the final proofs are in, so it should be like March, April when that actually arrives. I'm very excited. Very excited.
Very
cool. Great Modron March had a huge jump in our campaign on Thursday. So they're trying to figure out like why the Modrons are marching, and there might be something involved with a necromancer drow goddess and a bunch of other stuff. But Ted's character has been very focused on like mixing potions and drinking them to try and attain some kind of new power through magical mishaps. And I created a big table of stuff to be like, we'll roll on this when you do that to kind of see what happens. And last night I rolled 52, which was you are omniscient for 5 minutes. And everyone was like, what? So with him being omniscient for 5 minutes, we flashed over to some other players and we kind of talked about what they're doing in Sigil. And then we went back to Ted. And I'm like, I think your character can't comprehend everything that happened, but you have like flashes of insight into the whole thing. So he got some information on the actual bad guy that they haven't met yet, nor really know what's going on. And they got some other insight. And then something I thought was fun, I was like, if you're ever in a position, I'm going to give you 3 of these. Like if you're ever in a position where you want to try and remember something because you had omniscience and you knew everything, we'll roll a intelligence check. And regardless, if you're over a certain amount, you gain information. If you are lower, you don't gain information. That is now used and gone. And regardless, you're going to take psychic damage because it just hurts you to try and remember that time that you knew everything. So I thought that was a fun mechanic, and we're going to play around with that. And then Purple Planet, I started that, and I realized it's the exact same game as Hot Springs Island because they're on a thing, and it's a hex crawl, and they're trying to figure out how to escape the thing. And we were all laughing at Jordan, where it's like, well, Jordan, that's the games you like to run, apparently, is where we're stuck someplace. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. In my head, it was a lot cooler. And it is cooler. We're having fun, don't get me wrong. But they were giving me a little crap for basically moving them from one campaign to the other where it's the exact same thing. Like, we're stuck somewhere. We have to figure out how to get out. But we started Purple Planet, and we had a lot of fun on Sunday. It was really good. So what about Lucian? What games you playing?
Well, I thought we were going to play last night, but we ended up not playing last night. But we did. We were in our downtime from just before the holidays when we kind of all took a break. And we ended up leveling last night just because it was like, well, you guys were already close anyways, and we'll just level up. So I got to get to level 8 of the Twilight Cleric, and that means level 7 Arcane Archer. So we're really getting up there in the levels now, and I'm more cleric now than I am archer, although I'm still mostly archer. But
do you feel like you cool archer more than you cast cantrips and stuff?
This is the first time. Well, I always archer more than because I'm a sharpshooter. I'm a cheaty min-maxing sharpshooter. But this was the first time where an ability in the cleric class gave me extra damage to my arrow attacks. So now all of a sudden my damage for the first time is get to go up over something I've had all the way from really the beginning of when I had the feat. So that feels really good to see a little bit of a power boost there. But I just like the cleric versatility of spell lists. I'm still only in the 4th level area of spells. I got to get one more level of cleric to get to that, 5th level spells, so I can go to that list and start taking some stuff off. But there's some cool stuff out there, and I'm really enjoying it. We'll play again next week. It's been kind of fun getting this high level. It's probably the highest level character I've actually played that wasn't a one shot or something. Now,
so
yeah, yep. 15.
Do you regret multi-classing then? Like, because you could have cool level 15 abilities, or no?
Yeah, no, because it was there's no way I'd want to be a level 15 Arcane Archer. There's not enough to the class and the subclass to make it fun. I had to have something else. I wouldn't mind being a level 15 cleric. There's plenty of stuff you can do that theme, but I couldn't make the Arcane Archer work, and I knew I wanted to do this Arcane Archer. Now, I wish I could have made him more Hawkeye-like. I wish there was a way to do more bag of tricks arrows, but you get so few, and it never really increases very much past like 2 or 3 Arcane Archer arrows, and you can only pick 2 or 3 at any given time. I really wanted it to be something where you just had a garbage pail of maybe not super powerful, like but just
blind arrow. I don't know, water arrow, sand arrow, net arrow, grapple arrow, something like that. Yeah,
everything. Just like the kind of jack of all trades, even if it wasn't super powerful. I think I wanted a class that was more like that. Arcane Archer is not that, so I had to make it into something a little bit different. But I do like leaning into Khonshu and Moon Knight themes with the Twilight Cleric and the stuff that cleric can do, and it's been super fun. So I'm enjoying it. We're probably down on level 15 of the Mad Mage, and I think there's 23, 26 levels. I don't even remember how many levels in Dungeon of the Mad Mage there are, but we're getting down there. We're starting to get into some of the bigger minions. We're fighting cool stuff that we haven't seen before. We're still dealing with a lot of drow. So if you're big into drow, this is a good campaign for you. And there's lots of drow storylines going on.
I was just thinking, because I'm playing my artificer tomorrow that I haven't played in forever, but like that might be the arcane archer you want, or like the Hawkeye character, because I reflavor all of my spells as some cool thing, you know. So it's like a fire arrow is a fireball, you know, or something like that. And everything is I have pistols, and so everything is my guns as I fire, but they're just reflavored crossbows, you know.
Yep.
And so I can do that.
If you're a Hawkeye character, I would do artificer, because just like you said, so my arrows would be the spells I'm casting.
Yeah. So I cast like paralyze, and it's like, it could be a paralyzing dart, or it could be a rope wrapped around them, or something fun. So entangling strike, things like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny how we have similar character ideas, because I'm like, that's kind of what I'm playing right now, and it's a lot of fun. So, but I'm only level 7 or 8, so I can't wait till I get to like, I think
it only gets better.
I think 10 and 11 is when I can start attuning to like more magic items, and that's when I can really get like some cool synergy, especially with DM Nathan allowing us to manufacture items. So if we find an item in the book that we want, we can go and be like, I would like to spend X amount of gold, and then they'll craft this item for you. Which is not something I've ever really done, but I like the idea of players being able to choose a magic item that they want. So I think that's kind of fun.
We do that in downtime. We tell our dungeon master, hey, because we're with Act Inc. kind of campaign, we use our context to say we're looking for a magic item that does this, and then there's a bunch of rolls, and then somebody comes back and says, well, this is what this magic broker has, and then he lists, sometimes you might get the item you were looking for, and here's the price if you want to get it, lots of gold type of thing. Versus, we didn't have that, but hey, there's these potions that are available currently. There's this, gauntlets of ogre strength that's possible, and they're like, oh well, maybe I want that, and so you're kind of picking and choosing. So we do that during our downtime a little bit. But you also can ask him to say, hey, I want to build. Can I get materials to build something? And then he kind of creates a mini quest of, okay, you need these materials, and then you'll be able to get this thing. So he's done that too. So we even have intelligent magic items are in our game. So some of us have magic items that talk to us or have, their own personalities, which is fun. He lets us use kind of like bring NPCs and either make them companions or, people that go around with us, and they can come and leave throughout the campaign. Like Bob was one of ours. He was a Kenku that was a stone statue on one of the levels. We realized he was such a good stone statue that we went and realized he had been paralyzed and was actually a person that
petrified.
Petrified. Okay. So then we undid it, and then he traveled with us for at least 3 or 4 levels before moving on. So, and we used the sidekick rules for him. So he was Bob, Baub, our Kenku.
I love it.
Everybody
loved
RPGs. Bob. Yeah, so it was really fun.
No, that's really fun. So you guys, you got a good group. Like Danimal's a good guy, so it's super good.
And there's a lot of creativity, a lot of fun stuff that we do. Our DM lets us get away with a ton. We are definitely way overpowered and probably a super headache to him. Versus like sometimes he was telling us last night, he's like, one of our guys was saying, boy, I don't know what feat I should take, and Danimal's like, well, have you taken tough yet? Because look, this will give you all this, and it's our barbarian. He's like, yeah, it's gonna give you 45 more hit points. And I was like, no, he's a barbarian. He gets 90 no hit points because he'll be raging when those hit points go away.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, maybe I shouldn't have told you about tough. He's like, that's gonna ruin the game. Don't do that. So it's kind of funny how powerful we are getting, and your characters become pretty powerful. So dungeon masters, just be ready for your battles and stuff to go gonzo, because your characters should get built up.
Well, yeah.
But since
I had a worm in my Dungeon Crawl Classics game, and a lot of people are like, oh, Dungeon Crawl Classics is so fatal. It is when you're level 0 or 1, but they're level 4 now, almost level 5, and the elf, they were like, well, I think I'm going to try and cast Magic Missile, and he got lucky, but he also burned some other stuff. He ended up one-shotting it. Like, they were all just, like, trying to hit the AC, and they're like, and then he just, like, 35 damage, worm dead. And I'm like, well, that was cool. And so,
Encounter?
that's a game that's not necessarily trying to be balanced, because you are encouraged to run away if you're in a bad situation. Whereas D&D wants to be balanced, I feel. But it's hard, That was great. Anything else before we leave, sir?
Yeah, one last thing. So since we didn't play, we were on Roll20 building our characters, and I downloaded Kingmaker and took a look at it. They have the free first chapter of Kingmaker from Paizo's game on Roll20.
Very
and
nice.
I started reading through that, and that sounded really fun and cool. And that may be the campaign I run for the Pathfinder 2E game.
Awesome.
But there's other good ones out there I'm looking at too. But I was reading through that one, and it looked really good. It's free if you're on Roll20, so go ahead and get it if you want. Now I'll be quiet and mute, and you can take us out.
Well, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good time. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We will, of course, be back next week, and hopefully Wizards will have said something, or the world will have calmed down. We'll see what's going on. But with that, thank you so much for watching. I will see you all next week, if not before. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.